This is an update and a call to help today. Call for help today. So. Hey, this is Square's TV App Lab, number 113, where I usually show you how to use the tools that I've created to look better on video. I'm Michael Forrest, and I'm a video pencil, shoot, but mostly CueCam presenter, which brings all those things together. So, I'm going to start with some updates. Let me know if my audio is good and all that. So, the big update is I am going to China next week for 10 days with my partner and toddler. So, hey, Philip, welcome. So basically 6 years ago, I quit contracting to build my own products full time, but it meant I needed the money I'd saved up for this trip. And since then, we've uprooted our lives to move hundreds of miles from London to Edinburgh, and we've had a baby. But I said to myself, sort of heard it in the middle of the year, I was like, let's do this trip before he's 2, because then at least we don't have to pay for him. And you know, even though I don't 100% feel like I can afford it, I know I'm not going to regret it. So, you know, with each of these life events seems to have come a CueCam deadline as well. So this week's no different. So the pressure's on, and it feels like there's a lot to do still. But today I just thought I'd take you through what's going on with the CueCam beta and how close we are and why. So let's have a look. Right. I've just realised I did not put the nice styling on this one. Let's just go to pink and go to Comforter. There we go. We're on brand again. Right, so basically thousands of changes and no new features. That's CueCam 3.3. So you must be very excited. So CueCam 3.3 is the biggest change to CueCam since its release. So hi Neil. So this is I've spent hundreds of hours, I've counted them, hundreds of hours reworking CueCam's underlying architecture. I've deleted about 18,000 lines of code and removed multiple framework dependencies. And if you just sort of look, here's a git sort of stat of the git diff. So each of these is a file that's changed. Over here you can see how much has changed in that file. If it's red, that probably means it's been deleted. So I'll take you through it. So I'm just it just pages through, so you can see that's gone. Look, if we sort of come through, these are all the code files that have changed since the current live version. And then this is all framework code. So this is a lot of new code, but it's very reusable code, right? Rather than being application, because it was just application code, this is actually framework code, which then I can do lots more with than if it was just the application code. So you see here what we're looking at. 18,000 insertions, 17,000 deletions. So I built an entirely new rendering engine and changed the way everything is put together. But actually nothing in the app should have changed. Philip says, as a developer myself, this makes me super excited. It's like decluttering, cleaning and renovating the basement. So nothing should have changed. This is the thing. So should being the operative word. Nothing should have changed, but some things probably have. It's unavoidable with a rebuild like this. So that's really where you come in. But let's talk about why has it changed. So I needed to be able to fix bugs like this. So a small outline around a font, right? Why is that? Because I have an incredibly convoluted way of generating the text. That in order to kind of combine it with other things. Echo in recordings, colors too saturated, the colors aren't quite right? Different sort of the black frames in the rendering engine, there's no ability to change the LUT intensity. The colors of the camera LUTs are a bit off. So there's all these sort of bugs like this that they were just adding up, and they were all kind of just symptoms of, and it was just symptoms of an underlying kind of, it was a bit of a mess. We had color precision, compositing and animation synchronization. It was just all very piecemeal architecture that has just sort of accumulated over a long time. So why was it like this? Well, the idea for CueCam Presenter emerged from several other projects. We have Shoot, the iPhone app, which you can use your phone as a webcam. Video Pencil, which is how you can draw on your camera. Beat Sheet, which is a way of kind of controlling. I think I might have talked. Yeah, I think I go into this. Video Pencil camera. Easy VJ is another one that I made, and just all sorts of bits and pieces. So when I first added in-camera drawing to Shoot, I had a surge of interest from people who loved the concept and had ideas on how to take it further. So you could draw on your phone camera, but people were saying like, well, what if I could draw on my webcam on my Mac with my iPad like that? And I was like, oh, that's too difficult. I'm not doing that. And then I ended up doing it. And I was hearing from school teachers, sports coaches, entrepreneurs and professionals and like veteran broadcasters who were sort of pushing all the latest technological developments. Some people wanted more power. Others just needed simplicity. And I've realized to sort of run this as a business, if I start with the people who know their stuff, like how to manage an NDI feed and how to use applications like eCam Live, Mimo Live and OBS, I can sort of like make a tutorial and they're sort of like a bit more willing to try and get their head around it, and I don't need to, it's sort of like, it might be a bit hard to sort of set up, but then so's everything else in this space, so people are motivated. So that's sort of like where I start with this stuff, but I've always pushed towards solutions that are simple enough for anybody to pick up. So when I released Video Pencil for the iPad, which lets you draw on any camera source, coming from any other device, I met the needs of the professionals first. So, I put an NDI support and all those kinds of things. How does it look on an external display? That sort of stuff. How does it work with an A10 switcher? And then I released Video Pencil Camera, which was a Mac OS app that makes Video Pencil work without any configuration. You just have to sort of like accept the camera thing and it will automatically connect. So no longer did you need OBS in order to use Video Pencil. You could just download this free Mac app from the App Store and try it out. And that didn't just mean an easier Video Pencil, it also meant a remote controllable Video Pencil. So now I had a Mac app with a custom network connection to the iPad. I could start adding remote control features like switching pens or clearing drawings using your Mac's keyboard. So, and that was, that was a bit of a challenge to, I had to figure out how to make a virtual camera, distribute an app through the App Store, like how to integrate NDI into the Mac, how to get that stuff working. First, it had just an NDI connection, and then I figured out how to make my own video connection and send things that way instead. And then meanwhile, other people were interested in a different Mac app I'd released called Beat Sheet, which allows a sequence of cue cards to be created that would select different scenes in eCam Live or OBS in a linear sequence. So you could run a show without having to think about a million different Stream Deck buttons. And then people were asking for teleprompter support. They wanted to and I didn't really know anything about that, but I learned, okay, people set up a teleprompter and then that comes up as a display and then we can put something in there and we just, there's steps to that, but lots of people are quite comfortable with that. So then I sort of had this idea, well, what if I added some titles and made an NDI feed coming from Beat Sheet? And so I made that, and that could come into eCam, and you could be running your show in eCam. And then I sort of created an iOS teleprompter app for Beat Sheet that reused the networking stuff from Video Pencil and Video Pencil Camera. I was adding more features for professionals, but the ecosystem was starting to feel pretty inaccessible to non-technical users. And I kept having more ideas for Video Pencil Camera, like, sort of more remote control stuff, screen sharing, this sort of a side 3D feature, an audio pipeline, all these, like, it was just like really fertile with ideas once I started creating that sort of virtual camera an interface to Video Pencil. And the apps were great if you understood how to set everything up, but as the capabilities evolved, I needed a way to bring everything together in a way that anyone could use, because that's a lot of things. People are like, what do I need? Beat Sheet, Video Pencil. I've got Video Pencil on my Mac. Oh, do you mean you've installed Video Pencil on your Mac and to use it with the tablet, or do you mean Video Pencil Camera, which is the Mac app that can, it was all getting a bit complicated to talk about. But I make a habit of talking to my users, talking to you guys every chance I get. I didn't to start with, and that was a mistake. And as soon as I started doing it, suddenly I had a business instead of just like a vague, complicated idea. So one day I found myself in conversation with a guy from one of the big software companies. They were looking for an easy way to set up salespeople with presentation features that went beyond screen sharing or a vanilla webcam. But OBS was far too complicated to explain and impossible to share templates and content throughout an organization. And then it struck me, like the crux of what I've got isn't Shoot or Video Pencil, it's actually Beat Sheet. And I just need to migrate the virtual camera from Video Pencil camera into Beat Sheet. And then we don't need this weird NDI feed from Beat Sheet for titles. We can do all new stuff. And then documents and branding can be shared. Like, you know, you can start to share. You're not like just, it's an OBS scene where you need to have the resources. Like we can actually share bundled documents with content throughout an organization. And then secondary devices running Shoot and Video Pencil can be easily connected. And I can put everything under one license and give bulk education discounts, as well as running promotions. The App Store distribution just didn't, you know, that was another thing from talking to users, from going on going on shows and people are like, hey, have you got any discounts? I'm like, I can't just I wish I could just give you a promo code and then you get a discount, but the only way I could do it in the App Store is just like a global discount for a fixed period of time, which is just, you know, they just don't make it easy to do bespoke things. And I thought, yeah, I've already got the technology. I just need to put it together with a different user interface. I just need to bring together what I've already got. That was just dropped my Apple Pencil. And this was also when ChatGPT had just appeared, and I was pretty blown away with how quickly I could throw up a website for a new product. I think one of my favorite things when I first started out with ChatGPT was like, oh, I don't need to go and work with like a UX design person to get something that sort of looks like a landing page. It's like I'm using the normal stuff, like, because what I didn't know is like, what's the normal stuff that's on a website? What do the professionals just sort of automatically do? And that was going to take me a lot of research. But with ChatGPT, I was just like, okay, give me a landing page, and it could suggest the sort of the sections that there should be, some language, and then I could say, okay, now give me some Elixir data structures to put in my controller so that I can sort of populate this website. And it could do that as well. And it's like, imagine having sort of a content expert that can also like format the data as code. I was like, okay, this is huge, right? Like, it was an exciting time. And then, you know, so what was this called? It was called CueCam. No, it was not called CueCam Presenter. It was called Beat Sheet Cloud. No, I talked to the guy who was like, no, Beat Sheet Studio. Okay, we'll call it Beat Sheet Studio. That's cool because it's Beat Sheet and now it's a studio. Well, you know, that's what it was called then. But yeah, I had the technology, but getting everything working together was difficult, and getting it working perfectly was a whole different thing. To sort of having something small that did one thing, sort of just about sort of held together. I could just like quickly throw something up with like SceneKit or some framework, and I'll do some 3D. That'll be fun. Just getting it sort of working. Getting that first sort of thing working was good, but then I've gone off script. I need to just continue on the script. Getting it working was okay, but like there were sort of little hacks and problems with stuff. So anyway, months passed as I poured all my energy into this project. Deadlines whooshed by, including one based on, you know, when I moved, and the other based on the birth. You know, as I say, like you know, all these big life events. I was like, okay, I've got to get this finished before I move. So there was a lot of that. So I started by shipping something that I knew would give good results to somebody that knows what they're doing. But for this project to really work, I needed it to be flawless. And Philip says, with all the hype around AI, the impact that ChatGPT, Claude Code, etc. has for people working alone is a lifesaver. Well, it is. I'll talk about the downsides of having such a powerful. We'll talk about it in a minute. But anyway, so here are the. We don't like that title. That's not what we want to see. So let's just have a look at. I'll just sort of recap the CueCam releases quickly. So this was CueCam 1.0. So it had a preview there. That's me. It had like the AV stuff. That's the input. There's the outputs, and it had some sort of like stuff up here for like controlling things. Neil says, "Are you running the latest code in this demo?" No, I am not running the latest code, Neil. It's not ready. This is the production version of CueCam, the same one that everyone's got. So we got like a side 3D. You could add some text. You could sort of like fiddle with stuff up there, and it had the cue cards look like this. You could just have titles, and you could put bullets in, right? CueCam 2, sorry, I've got these, I don't like, it's doing something I don't want it to do. let's just try. I should run through it before I sorry, right. Okay. It thinks it's got a sorry, I just left some slides on that I shouldn't have. Anyway, look, so CueCam 2 was a bit more man, I don't want, I've just got to I just want to get rid of this deck.png. It's got itself confused. This is the sort of thing that the new version will actually make a lot easier to fix. So CueCam 2, I sort of had this dashboard concept, and then I had, so CueCam 2, and it also had, I guess I don't have that third screenshot. That's what happened. So this was 3.0. So that was another year later, and it started to make things a bit more sort of idiot-proof, and with a new graphic style that made it harder for people to produce. So the sliding thing, like that was, I did that sort of sliding style that you see me using in order to sort of stop people from putting just text over text all the time, trying to make it harder to produce ugly presentations, so we could sort of do this kind of style. It's my thing for synchronizing the screenshots from the website is it misfired a little bit. This is not CueCam's fault per se. This is my my own process's fault. Right. So this was CueCam 3, and so this basically sort of made it feel a bit more like Keynote. The cards are here. It introduced recording. It had this, the preview area. You can record different layers. All that kind of stuff came in 3.0. And it has a sort of presenter mode that I just made to be a bit more like Keynote. I thought like Keynote's kind of got this design figured out, so I'm just going to like use that stuff, right? And then CueCam 3.1 introduced live streaming support, which I'm using right now. And then CueCam 3.2 introduced slots. And CueCam 3 is not going to have any new features, any major new features. It might, a couple of like fun things might just creep in, just as a natural thing, like being able to put screen shares on cards and do some different layouts, just because it's like easier to leave it in than to not put it in. But it's going to solve a lot of the problems that made the previous versions sometimes confusing to use. So I wanted to talk about like some challenges with, with this whole project. And to start with, like ChatGPT was an incredible new tool when I started the project. It let me spin up mostly working versions of new features really easily. CueCam has been my, first big LLM project, since LLMs exist. And I've learned a lot from this process. And like AI tools are great for surfacing APIs and fleshing out code in unfamiliar languages and just really like sort of doing the stuff that's always the same, but like can take you a couple of days if you have to do it yourself, but like you're not really inventing anything. You just kind of need it to, be fine like everyone else has done. But they also make a lot of stuff up, and I don't know if I've ever kept any code that was generated by the machine. It really sort of pollutes the code base with unclear naming conventions and inefficient implementations, and always like uses a lot more code than necessary. And when it gets stuck, it has a tendency to either make up APIs, at which point, I learned soon, like, okay, I've just got to, you sort of have to detect, develop a smell for when it's just doesn't know anymore because it's incapable of telling you it doesn't know, right? It's just like, okay, that would be great if that API exists. It doesn't. We're just going to stop. I'm going to find out myself. I'm going to go to Google, actually. But yeah, what it tends to do when it doesn't know or when it can't solve a problem, it just like, it will kind of like nest it, the same kernel of like bad not working solution, but it will nest it in increasing layers of abstraction, and like half an hour will go by and it's like generating all this code and you're like, is this the answer? And then you just like, and I use it too much when I'm tired, right? And so sometimes you're like sometimes you're just like, no, I just need to think about this because it doesn't know. So yeah, Philip says I have a collection of screenshots where AI was trying to gaslight me. It is a very gaslighty thing, yeah. And the problem is that AI kept leading me into alleys with quick wins that instantly became technical debt, which needed dedicated time for me to really understand and resolve properly. So it might be able to sort of spin up a feature, but like in order to like get it right or go beyond the sort of like just about working version now, and it's in there now, but it's I've never really given it like enough time to make it quite right. So for example, like camera LUTs took me about an hour to add to CueCam originally, but it's never had an amount slider because you can't just like add a few lines of code to one file to do that. Like I needed to completely rethink how my rendering system works in order to be able to kind of parameterize something like that, because it's just not in there as it is. But I can't blame everything on the robot. I was using a lot of Apple frameworks that I hadn't used before, like I'd used a bit, but like my understanding, I didn't have a huge depth of understanding of all these like core media, like some of the the metal stuff, a lot of the audio stuff. I didn't have that sort of deep understanding, and I sort of chose SceneKit for the virtual camera renderer because I knew I could set up. So SceneKit is Apple's almost like, it's kind of an aging system now, but it's almost like their game thing. I've always liked the idea of using game engines to make like user-facing software. Like it's just like tools, because I just like the way they make sort of that interactivity easier. But yeah, I could set up a 3D environment with SceneKit in a visual editor and try and like shader, sort of real-time edit some shaders and see it just working. I was like, I'm going to end up building tools like this, so I might as well use the stuff that Apple's got. And I used Metal for compositing because I understood it was the most efficient way to approach graphics. And I used SwiftUI for the slide layouts because it made it possible to have much more dynamic cards than if I'd been doing, I don't know if you've ever tried laying out text, it's a nightmare. I was going to put a screenshot, but you've got, once you start trying to sort of lay out text and you're sort of thinking about descenders and ascenders and kerning and ligatures, and like how there's a visual distance between lines versus like it's all very complicated. So SwiftUI there's so much. Typography is one of the hardest things. So I'm like, SwiftUI, that's Apple's big usability framework, user interface framework. You lean on that. So I'm trying to lean on the tools that make my life easier that Apple provide. But when you actually sort of see what went into kind of the rendering engine, the old one, I sort of drew it up here. So if I sort of show you this, these are in SceneKit. These are all sort of the planes that are layered up, right? So we've got sort of the cameras living there. We've got a slide layer here. We've got like an overlay and a watermark that sort of sits here. We've got like the background thing, and then there's these like filters that sit on the camera layer. And then to render the slides, I'm rendering it in SwiftUI, and then I've got a thing that lets me track the frames of each element, and then it renders out this as one big image, and then I sort of have to track each of these frames, and then I sort of reconstruct it based on the frames, like cropping out the little areas of each thing. I put and sort of have shaders to do all these movements and transitions, make things move interestingly, and then I sort of combine that up in Metal, render that into a Metal texture, and then stick that back into SceneKit in its own layer. So it was it ended up getting pretty complicated, and then SceneKit's sort of like rendering out like the main camera, but then it's also got to do a different render for the iPad for Video Pencil, and then it's also doing another one to do that sort of desktop overlay where it shows you where your picture-in-picture is and stuff, and then another one for demo mode. So it was just doing kind of a crazy amount of it was just kind of. And then when you brought these renders back into here, that's when you get these like compositing problems, and it was all started looking a bit off sometimes. The colors didn't quite match. The screen shares that were coming through on this layer didn't have the same color profiles. So there's all sorts of stuff like in the current system that makes it quite hard to deal with. And also like the animation engine, like here I've got a different animation engine to here, right? And synchronizing the two was basically, you know, like as I sort of show, so I keep trying to pan on the wrong thing, like the timing on metal was, I just couldn't synchronize it with the timing of everything else. And then when you've got like a video player that has to sort of like get ready to start before it starts showing to this layer, but then all the kind of timing of the transitions is hidden inside some Apple stuff that I can't really look at. It was just really hard to get everything perfect. So I also like offloaded all of the virtual camera rendering to a secondary actor, to a render actor, because there was all this, all these race conditions and memory safety things when passing around all these buffers from different sources. I don't want to get too, I'm getting very technical, but I had to also write C to implement the virtual mic. I went through 3 full rebuilds of the audio pipeline before version 1.0, and I learned a lot, right? So what I needed really, what I need now, now that I've sort of gone through all of that, through that gauntlet, I need, I had a lot of problems with the architecture, color, and I just couldn't get it perfect. And there was no Apple framework that solved all of my problems at once. It is a little bit held together with string. It's been getting almost impossible to modify. So, synchronizing the camera motion with the metal shader and the video playback was just all running on different threads was just really hard to think about. And as well as being sort of buried in these opaque Apple systems that they were also, SceneKit, they're trying to get rid of, right? So they're not exactly sort of making that better. So even simple things like moving the picture-in-picture was just like painful. So I waited for Apple's 2025 developer conference just in case they had anything that would solve my problems. But I was resigned to the fact I needed to build a framework myself. I wanted something with the declarative syntax of SwiftUI. I'm really programming speak, so I apologise. I see the viewership has dropped off since I started yammering on, but that's fine. But yeah, I just wanted something like SwiftUI or React that would be optimized for video and audio rendering over a virtual mic and camera. And I wanted a simple source of truth for the state of the application at any moment in time. I just wanted to know, right, this is where we are, and then the framework makes sure everything moves to the right place. So instead of like firing off 6 different transitions and hoping that they all line up, we say, no, this is what we want it to be, and the framework figures out how to get it from A to B. And so that then becomes a lot easier to think about. So I did some research, and after reading Chris Eidoff and Florian Kugler's book, Thinking in SwiftUI, which is a $40 purchase for an ebook, it felt just demystified enough for me to attempt something similar. And actually I got to talk with Chris, who wrote that book last week. I finally got him on a call, and he showed me how deep the rabbit hole really goes. So I've done an okay job of sort of replicating some of what SwiftUI does, but I have not really implemented the incredibly clever algorithm that they're using. So anyway, Real-Time Swift is my SwiftUI style of declarative audio-video framework that will power CueCam Presenter and my other applications in the future. So the virtual camera, what is this supposed to be showing? Let's see. The virtual camera looks like I am supposed to be sharing Xcode. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to be sharing Xcode. So let's bring up that. Yeah, I just need to bring it onto this screen. Right, so here's Xcode. So all that stuff that I showed you was thousands of lines of code to sort of like tell it like what the virtual camera looks like, how it moves. But now I'm pretty much describing the rendering system in, it almost fits on screen. It almost fits on screen in one go. So we've got like the layering, Z-stack. We've got the slide view that's in the background. We've got like, and then I've got the views that can displace each other. I've got like whatever's being shared if I want, and this is where I do some fun stuff with an interleaved camera. Countdown clock is its own thing. Video pencil layer sort of just looks like that, and then the audio stuff just kind of looks like this. So I'm able to just like describe almost basically the entire state of what the virtual camera is supposed to be, kind of in a file like this, and then the slide view is its own is its own thing. So you see I've got like, it's a V stack with, you know, a lower upper third layout if it's horizontal, or like an H horizontal stack if it's the other kind. And then we've just got sort of like, it's really, I mean, it's a little bit, but this is kind of just, I copied this over from the Swift UI code I had, so and just like copied it into my own framework. And so I'd already really done the work of figuring out what all this needs to look like, but now I'm in charge of how it gets onto screen. So now, like, I can pass in like these arbitrary audio video sources in, you know, and so. Like, so anything, an image, a movie file, a live camera, a siphon feed, a screen share, like everything is using the same code to be displayed at the end of the day, which means stuff like, do we want to put a screen share in here? Or do we even want to like have a screen share, have you here and have the screen share here? Like, that's now really trivial to do, whereas before they were all different kinds of entities and different kinds of things and with different capabilities. Now it's just like, a source can have video and it can have audio, and we can sort of do the same transitions on either and lay either out in the same way. So that's exciting. So another thing that happened while I was working on all this stuff was while I was working with Metal, I found myself building abstractions like this, a quad renderer. I just want to like, okay, it's just a quad which like sort of takes, oh God, sorry, I'm drawing a really bad. So you say, okay, here's my picture, and there's some text here, so we sort of take this quad and we render it at these coordinates in the camera. I just realised that Core Image is doing that. Apple's Core Image framework is basically doing the same thing, isn't it? They just put in like rectangles and things like that. But they also then give you these really amazing debugging features as well. But, you know, not to be outdone, I've got my own debugging features. So this is like a glimpse of what the new engine looks like to work on. So this is CueCam beta. This is the dev version of CueCam. You can see up here. So what you might notice is, hey, look, the preview has the correct camera style in it. It's not like a circle. It's actually the real render. But like what we can see over here is like, this is the I can see the structure of everything, and I can look at each phase of it. So here's how the camera comes in, and then once the camera LUT has been applied, it looks like this. And then once the chroma key has been applied, it looks like this. And each of these things, if I click on it, it kind of highlights it over here. I can see, here's the frame thing, here's an opacity thing, here's the image. I can see that's coming in like that. I can see all this extra information about it. I can see here's my transition. So this is like all my debugging stuff. And I've even got a little, like this is like the structure of all the views. I can sort of look at that down here. And then I've even got like a little timeline here where I can sort of see, sort of like play back the transitions and stuff. It sort of works. But obviously you're not going to see all this stuff. You're just going to see the decks and the slide in the editor. But when I'm working on it and debugging it, this is just like, it's a breath of fresh air. Stuff like you saw just then, the transparent background sort of flashed in for a moment, right? None of that anymore. We're going to be synchronized. So I was going to say the other important realization was that the virtual camera needs to be on the main thread, just like the user interface, not drifting about in the background, because everything just needs to be locked to, you know, when I click, everything needs to be in sync. Like, it shouldn't be like maybe a little bit later. So Real-time Swift runs on the main actor, allowing interactions in the user interface to be really tightly locked to the feed, which it just wasn't before. And I was I think this was me to start. This was me before, you know, this was me shoot video pencil even. This was me like trying to get clever with CueCam, and then this is me now, like just like it should. This belongs on the main actor. By the way, I do not endorse IQ. I noticed that this is like IQ down the bottom, and it's a bit. You know, I don't endorse that. Watch Sean's The Bell Curve video to see why that concept is not great. Anyway, so I started by sharing a lot of progress reports on YouTube. So it's going to, I don't know why that's not, because it wants the, I'm just trying to show you the playlist. I guess I put the wrong playlist. If we go to playlists, yeah, Real-Time Swift, I've got this, we don't need to see it. So I did quite a lot of videos, kind of like, if you're interested in all this detail, like in the code, like I started a bit of a series where I talked through it. Someone said, just drop an orange Swift logo somewhere in the thumbnail, and hopefully it will get some more views. So I did. But yeah, I made a lot of progress coming to the end of like July, and then I thought, okay, right, I'm gonna stop making all these videos. But like August, September, it really turned into the law of, you know, the last 20% takes another 100% of the time. But in this case, it feels more like 200, 300% of the time, just kind of getting through those last bits. So I've had my head down. I've been getting through it. The toddler has been making it harder to sleep recently, but I've still been getting enough sleep, more or less. But the burnout has been kind of catching up with me a little bit. So where am I up to? Sorry, that was like, all I want to talk about is all these technical details, and I wish I could talk about more, you know, show you like, what does it mean for you? What it's going to mean for you is like, when you run this thing, it's just going to feel better. But where I'm up to is I'm nearly ready to start beta testing, but I don't want to dump something on you that's got a load of avoidable bugs. So I will either be releasing the beta at the start of next week, if I can get it like good enough that I feel I can share it, but I'm not going to like kill myself to do it, right? I'm not going to like destroy myself to do it. I want to kind of be ready to go on this break. So either it will be the start of next week, or it will be early November after I've had a couple of weeks off. And if it's, you know, this has been, you know, if it's not obvious, like this has been an incredibly tough project, and the long tail has been really punishing. And I put a lot of this down to ChatGPT, because it's sort of like all these little details that I kept adding because it made it easy to add another little detail, I'm now having to re-implement right from scratch, like properly, and that just it, and because I don't want to give you something that stuff is missing from in a sort of minor version update. I want everything to still be there, but like just smoother. So you know, but increasingly I will get a glimpse of how it's going to be, and it's really, really exciting. We've got like these smooth, interruptible transitions. It feels so good just being able to like hammer the button, and it's sort of like it doesn't like glitch. It just like everything sort of stays smooth and easing. And if something was halfway in, it just like goes back out again. It's like pokes in, and like it's just like looks crisp. This debugging experience, sometimes I'm like, oh, what's going on? Oh, I can just open up my debugger and look and see all the stuff. And it's like, oh, right, so it's in that node, debug into there, I can see which idea it is, I can like put a breakpoint in, I can see what core image is created. It's really good. And then it all just feels like something I can build on, right? Like really amazing features with hardly any code. But it's hard not to fixate on what doesn't work yet, especially when every morning I wake up with new ideas for the future. Every shower I get swamped with new ideas, all depending on this new system. It's been much easier to develop than when I've been dependent on mysterious Apple frameworks, but there's no escaping the fact that it's just massive. I cannot wait for it to be ready so that CueCam can feel the way it's always supposed to, right? Like it just needs to work right, and then like and just not be weird. I think that's going to make such a huge difference to how it feels, the little confusing things that people run up against now. I'm just looking forward to a lot of that going away, and it just like being okay, you know, when it just feels like it's not that much now because it doesn't have all the glitches, right? It's just like, oh, that's just doing that like it's supposed to. I can understand it, right? It just makes it's been harder to understand when there's been these little kind of idiosyncrasies. So how can you help if you want to? Like, if you know how to report a bug, then you can be a huge help. So there's a form on the website. I think a lot of you here will have seen this and been doing it and been waiting for me to get to a lot of your bugs, but I'm gonna be able to pick up the pace soon with all that stuff. Yeah, the form on the website posts issues to the public Discord, which you can use to track any little details or big features that don't quite work in the beta. And just reach out to me on my email if you're interested in getting this on your machine and doing some bug testing. Cool thing, like something that was important to me for this one was like, finally I've got it so that the beta build lives separately and it has its own webcam and virtual mic separate from the real one. So you can have both installed at the same time, and one's not going to like break the other one. Well, maybe don't run them at the same time if you're using video. Well, no, even with Video Pencil you can like block one. So it's going to be much easier to run both at the same time, whereas the old one, it would like install over the top, and then because they all wanted to use the same camera. And that even in itself like kind of ruined my Monday this week, trying to figure out why it wasn't deploying like with the beta version. So I've just sort of made sure that that's working before getting back into the last sort of transitions and things that I want to get working. So yeah, if you're interested, feel free to reach out. By the way, like if there's any thoughts, if you got any thoughts, feel free. I saw echo. Am I still echoing? How long have I been echoing? Also, I'm trying to get Google to give me I'm trying to get Google to give me an increased quota on the on the API request, so that the live streaming, because it runs out of tokens for the chat messages, and then I don't see the chat in my teleprompter anymore. So I just missed the last 7 minutes worth of audio. Am I still okay? It was echoing when I was showing CueCam. Okay, all right. Thanks, guys. Double audio. Okay. The CueCam dev interface was causing echo. Fun. You never know what's going to happen, do you? I should have made sure it was muted. Okay, what are we saying? Philip, if I have only one version running, will this version listen to the deep links? The deep links use a different URL scheme, so it's going to be, instead of like CueCam : it's CueCam beta : so it is different links. So that's just so if you that is going to open up the wrong version if you try and use the document that was written in one. So yeah, let me say, come and find us on Discord. There are over 300 people. Can you see how tired I am? Can you just see, like, I'm at the end of my tether. Like, I'm just... This has been tough, right? But yeah, Discord, right. I'm going to be away for... I can't really ever completely disconnect, because I have a company of one, and I need to make sure nothing terrible happens and the website doesn't break, and so will have my laptop with me, so I will be sort of checking in a little bit. But yeah, Discord is where you can hopefully get help with things. So that's all I'm gonna say today. I'm not gonna play some music today. I've just had too much to do, as always. But thank you. I really appreciate you all being here. I really appreciate your support. So just thank you so much, and just thank you for your patience, and just like sort of not, because I have this. I mean, you know, like I always fear that people get excited about what I'm doing, and then I'm just always waiting for people to sort of like lose patience and drift off, and you know, like, so I'm always trying to sort of prevent that from happening. But it's just, there's so much to do. This is such a project. I'm really doing something ridiculously ambitious. That probably shouldn't be attempted, but I know I can do it. 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 I know I can get this done. So I'm going to China next week. That's going to be fun. 10 hours on the plane with a toddler. So I'm looking forward to it. We're just going to stay in Beijing the whole time, and I am excited because the last time I went to sort of East Asia was when I was in Tokyo in like 2007. I just thought, wow, it's just all these things that you take for granted. Suddenly they're just different. Like all these things that are just like normal things. It's like, oh, that's another way you could do that thing that we all do every day. And that's just that. I kind of just want to reset my brain a bit and just kind of like go, okay, yeah, no, things, all this stuff, the routine, the repetition, just kind of snap out of it a little bit and see where we are when I come back, and just try and get refreshed and actually have a little bit of a break. So thank you all for joining. Thank you. I hope I can get the beta out this week. But as always, like, some weird stuff starts coming in. I'm like, well, I've really had to change a lot of code just to fix a small little thing, but at least I know I'm making it right, more and more correct, rather than layering on hacks or anything like that. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you